ask at different points in the project, hey, how are we doing? This is the last time this is gonna go on, I promise. How are we doing on this project? What can we do better? Do you feel like we're communicating enough? That's where we need to improve the most. Our communication's good, I want it to be great. What's up guys, episode 15 of Coffee Break. We got a couple questions. These were actually questions that were submitted underneath last week's episode of Coffee Break. So if you guys have questions for a future episode, make sure you're dropping them below this video and we'll make sure we read them on a future episode. So first question, what happens when a subcontractor performs shoddy work and you have to correct it? Does that cost to fix or resolve fall onto the homeowner, or do you make your sub pay for it? Great question. I've actually had subs ask me this question, peers ask me this question, and even a client. I actually had a client call me and say, Nick, listen, I know he messed up, he's ripping it out, I see you guys reworking. Am I getting charged for this extra time? Like, what about the extra management? Your guys are on site having to undo this stuff. Walk me through it, like, just be real with me. The truth is, it's not the client's fault. We're hired as a general contractor, as a builder, as a contractor, as a remodeler, whatever we're hired for, to manage a project. So these issues that we run into are absolutely not the client's responsibility in any way. So if we make a mistake, if we're, for instance, we go back to our elliptical stair that we built, we finished it and we realized that it didn't come out that great, and this was one of the first times we were bend laminating a beam like that, and we ate that cost. So in our budget, yeah, our hours are being applied to that, but then you're seeing a negative, essentially a negative bill against there, saying, hey, we're gonna pull those hours back out of it. We're gonna have them in there just so you know that, like, hey, the job didn't just stop for 1 week, but we're showing that we're pulling those hours back, and they get applied, you know, as an overhead cost, and that's a cost to us. Now, if a sub messes up, that has to be a conversation, and that just has to be a conversation that you have with your sub. And, you know, there's times where it probably makes sense where the sub's gonna pay for it. There's times where maybe a sub can't pay for it. At the end of the day, I'm human, my subcontractors are human, my guys are human. Let's just have a real conversation. If I genuinely believe in doing the right thing, and I've made mistakes and I haven't been able to afford to fix them, but I've always communicated that when I can't afford them, I wanna make this right. Or I wanna make this right, here is how I can do that. And just have a conversation. Same thing with my subs. If I go back to a sub and say, listen, I gotta rip this out, you know, I want you to pay for it, and they tell me I can't afford to pay for it, I'm not gonna stomp my feet around and demand that they pay for it. And maybe there's situations that might happen, you know, knock on wood, I haven't had to do that, but I'm gonna have just a man-to-man, woman-to-woman, well, I guess man-to-woman conversation, not woman-to-woman. I'm just gonna have a real conversation with them and just walk through it, like, listen, this is why we need to redo this. This is I'm willing. The relationship is more important to me than you paying for this. So let's work together. Is that too loud? So we're in the shop and the vacuum bag's going. You guys can deal with it for like 15 seconds. It recharges. But I'm gonna have a real conversation with them and just understand where they're coming from and offer to work with them. Maybe they just need an extra guy. Maybe the owner of the company is going to come in and they just need a laborer to come in and help. You know, maybe we can work together and come up with a solution, because the bigger picture is that we need to fix this. We need to make the situation correct for the client. The client has hired us to do a project, and yes, it happens, but we need to always stand behind it. And I really do stand behind that rip it out mentality, is that they're paying us to manage a project and hit a certain level of expectation. We're gonna mess up, but we need to hit that no matter what. And we need to have this mentality that we always have to be giving our best. So communicating that up front with the sub is equally as important. I had another point I wanted to get to on that one, and I forget what it was, and I hope I remember. I remember. So I started talking about how we apply those man hours back to as an overhead cost. Well, this actually goes into kind of our man hour discussion in a previous episode on the fact that, you know, maybe an apprentice, and this is a little tidbit on how we work our billing hourly rate. So let's use an apprentice for an example. An apprentice might make, you know, $15 to $20 an hour. I'm just using that as an example. But they're always going to be billed out at, say, $35 or $40 an hour. I forget what the math is, but just let's use let's use 30 bucks as an example. And the guy that's making $15 an hour, he's new, so he's gonna make a lot of mistakes. So that $30 an hour is covering all of that cost, but also there's some fluff on it, so we're covering those mistakes. It's part of that education tool. And as they make their way up and they're making $20 an hour, the overhead, we're still covering the cost of that person, but there's probably less fluff on that because they're not making as many mistakes, so we don't have to account for those. So that's kind of how we float this like sliding scale man hour. So when they get into a carpenter, the same thing. They're going to start at the bottom of that. Understandably so, they're going to make some mistakes, and we need to be able to use that as education. But we don't want to just say, you know, hey, we'll bill out at the actual hourly rate, and as they make mistakes, it's all over the place. That's why we just say, let's make it easy. An apprentice is billed out at 30 bucks an hour. A carpenter, et cetera, all the way through. And then those people slide through this scale, and depending on their experience level, they end up in a certain spot. Thus, always making sure that we have some fluff in there for education. Now, that fluff might go away, and we might be into it for more education, but then at that point, now it's just a strict overhead cost because, you know, maybe we've made a big mistake and we've had to rip a lot of stuff out, which we've done on plenty of projects. This is actually going back to our question last week, and people love talking about pre-construction, cost plus, all of this. But when you are going through a project and something that was not finalized during pre-construction phase finally comes together, are you giving your clients a price on that, like a change order, before you build it out, or are you just tracking costs on it and then billing for what it costs? This is something I battle in, that we may not have a final design in place, and then as it comes together, whether I just track and bill it, or whether I should stop and price things out and issue it as a change order. I hope that makes sense. It does make sense. From Brennan. Communication. It has to go back to what you're setting up with the client. Is schedule absolutely imperative that you have to get started before everything is designed? Most of the time, yeah, they want to get going. Hey, we'll make decisions along the way, but you just have to have that open communication back and forth. Hey, listen, you haven't finalized a tile selection. I'm carrying 20 bucks a square foot for tile. You know, that's what you're gonna go out with. All right, well, you came back with a tile that's $200 a square foot, and it actually takes more time to install. You know, do you want me to stop and price this and figure out what exactly this is gonna do to the budget, or do you want me to just go understanding that you're 10 times the cost on material, and thus you're gonna end up spending more time on install? I'm using an extreme example there, but that's with everything. You have to have that conversation. Don't assume things. I think that's what you're getting at, Brennan, is that you're getting to a point where you're trying to assume what the right move is. Should I assume that they're okay with me tracking time and material and just bill them later, to maybe like send that bill and like kind of have that nervous anxiety of like, are they gonna be mad about this? Or do I stop the job and say, hey, I gotta stop because I gotta price this? You have to have that conversation. Just be upfront, like, hey, I saw these final decisions come in. You know, we talked in the early steps of this project that we didn't have this stuff finalized. Hopefully you built some allowances out in that budget. Clearly communicated that, hey, this is your exposure on the job. Here are your allowances. This is what I have for appliance selections, tile selections. Maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe it's the siding choice on the house. You have no idea what you're going to side the house in, and then they come back and they want red cedar shingle, or there goes the vacuum press again. Red cedar shingle or vinyl siding. Well, you're going to have to explain that, hey, I carried vinyl siding, red cedar, let me price it out, but that's going to be more. Are you okay with that? Do you want me to do you want me to go forward with it? Ultimately, the best thing to do is have that in writing, have it as an agreement before you do proceed. So when that stuff comes in, you know, this is and I feel like a lot of people are probably watching this like, absolutely not. Nick's entirely wrong. You have to get a signed change order first. Yes, that is the right way to do it. Get an agreement first, so there is no surprises, and they don't feel like there's a gun to their head that they have to make a decision, or they've already made the decision without understanding the cost. When that stuff comes in, just have that communication right away. Like, hey, listen, I was assuming vinyl siding. You're asking for red cedar. Like, that's going to be a price increase. I'm going to get pricing on that as soon as possible. You know, but the most important thing to get out of this is making sure that you're communicating that, because you know it's going to be more money. So get on the phone, talk with the client, explain, hey, this is going to be more money. let me do some pricing on this. I just want you to know. If you're up against the wall and your siders are standing outside waiting that decision, spitting, Doug, I'm all fired up right now. If they're waiting on that decision, I mean, that's really late in the game, and I would probably say, hey, let's slow down, stop for a minute, because if they're making decisions that last minute, there's probably more issues there. They should be making decisions with plenty of time to procure the material in a timely manner, but also price it and like kind of go through the whole sample and approval motion. So yes, always get some sort of agreement, but the first step is always communicating what your initial thought is and making sure that they understand where you're coming from and that you're understanding fully why they may be choosing that, because maybe they think that it's a less expensive option. You don't know that. But having a conversation early on is absolutely going to get to the bottom of that. This is a great one from Scott. In regards to how you treat your clients or your employees, where do your values come from? God bless you. Personal experience based on previous jobs you had, perhaps a parent or reading books about being an owner. I'm impressed by your, well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that, Scott. I try to just be a good person. I feel like that's a lame answer. I can't answer it that way. I think it's absolutely experience. I do take a lot of time to either listen to books or read books. I tend to do kind of both at the same time about leadership, because I think that is one thing that I realized early on, that I'm building a team here, and I don't, I see all of us as family, as a team, and I don't want to be a boss. I don't want to be someone that just comes around and just kind of drives home like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is a team approach, and being a leader and understanding leadership is really important. So I'd say, yeah, a lot of it is attributed to books and kind of mentors. I work with a business coach. I've worked with other business coaches. There's so much information and knowledge out there, and I feel like I'm going to get this question just by mentioning business coach. Should someone, I'm derailing here, should someone work with a business coach? I've worked with business coaches. I've also went to seminars. I've went to sales seminars and marketing seminar. I've went to a lot of these, and what it comes down to, and I think the general consensus is that if I go to this and I spend all this money, I'm going to be super successful. And that, even if you tell yourself that's not how you're thinking, I feel like a lot of people still go into it thinking that, and it has to be you first. Like, you have to be willing to do it before working with someone, and that's absolutely the way it was with leadership. And what it came down to, my values, is that I needed to want this for me first and then want it for them. And when it comes to, my team, when it comes to clients, I always try to put myself in their shoes and understand the position that they're in. And, for me, I don't want to be a no man. I don't want this to be a company that says no. We always want to say yes. And even with the wildest ideas, because that's what makes us, us. That's we're agile, we're young, we're creative. Like, that's what really gets us going in this industry. We want to be different, and we want to be different by not focusing on what other people are doing and just taking what someone wants and achieving that. And it's super fun, and doing that in a team approach is even more gratifying than when it was just me early on, or even me and just a few people. It's wildly gratifying to do it as a team and all be on the same page. So to answer your question, Scott, I think it really does. It comes down to experience and finishing a project and seeing how our client reacts to it, understanding where we fell short, addressing those issues that arose during the project, or taking criticism even from the worst client that is totally unrealistic, listening to what really they didn't like, and also listening to what the clients that do like working with us, or maybe the client that loves working with us but can't stand the fact that we do XYZ. Well, what is the XYZ, and can we address those things, because they love us otherwise? Like, why are we falling short here? And getting that information, whether it's through a survey, SurveyMonkey, or guild quality, like it sends out a survey and gets like a third-party review on you, or a house review, or a Google review, or whatever it is, like using that information not just for promotional reasons, but really listening to what your clients have to say. But ask at different points in the project, hey, how are we doing? This is the last time this is gonna go on, I promise. How are we doing on this project? What can we do better? Do you feel like we're communicating enough? Because I feel like, for me, especially right now, like that's where we need to improve the most. Our communication's good, I want it to be great. But asking the client and asking those questions before it's the end of the job is going to help, because there's too many times where I get to the end of the job and we're sitting down doing a testimonial and I ask a question and like I hear the pause. I'm like, all right, that's where we fell short. And Doug actually has a video. Like I think I might release some of the questions that didn't get answered the way we would like, but we'll come back to that. But Scott, great question, and I think what it comes down to experience, and then like being open to educating yourself, and whether that's through books or business coaches or mentors, audiobooks, podcasts. There's so much information out there, and when you listen to it and you try to apply it to what you're doing, not random, but it's funny when I read a lot of business books or listen to business podcasts or audiobooks, I think of it in two different ways. I think of it business, but I also think of it in my marriage, and because I think that they're very similar in a lot of good ways, and it's interesting to make that relation because it really ties the professional and the personal and how they're really intertwined and not as separated as one might think. So again, guys, if you have questions, drop them in the comments below. We'll make sure we get to them on a future episode. As always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next week.